Welcome to the Inner Lens, where we look inward not to fix, but to understand. If you've ever been told you think too much, neuroscience has just vindicated you. Research published in late 2025 confirms what overthinkers have always suspected, but society refused to believe. Your exhausting mental patterns aren't psychological weakness, they're physiological sophistication. Your brain doesn't malfunction when it replays conversations from 3 years ago or simulates outcomes for decisions you haven't made yet. It's operating with neural architecture, found in only 15–20% of the population, a cognitive configuration that processes reality in layers most minds never access. While the world rushes past on autopilot, you dissect. While others react, you anticipate. While most people accept surface explanations, your mind demands coherence, depth, and truth. This isn't anxiety. This is advanced cognitive processing, and it comes with 5 rare neurological traits that explain why your mind works the way it does. But here's what nobody warns you about. These same traits that make you insightful, empathetic, and strategically brilliant can also drain you to the point of physical exhaustion if you don't understand how to work with them. So let me ask you something that might land uncomfortably close. Do you feel mentally exhausted even when you've done nothing all day? Does your body physically tense when conversations end without resolution? That's not overthinking. That's your brain's default mode network, running at intensity levels most people never experience. If this already feels too accurate, leave a comment below. Sometimes, knowing you're not alone is the first step toward understanding your own mind. Let's start with the most misunderstood aspect of overthinking: future-oriented cognition. When you mentally rehearse conversations before they happen or imagine worst-case scenarios, you're not catastrophizing, you're engaging sophisticated neural circuitry in your hippocampus, medial prefrontal cortex, and posterior cingulate cortex. A groundbreaking 2021 study published in Frontiers in Psychology and confirmed by 2025 research reveals that future-oriented thinking actually reduces anxiety by activating what psychologists call optimized primary-secondary control strategies. In simpler terms, when your brain simulates future threats, it's not creating fear. It's building psychological resilience by preparing adaptive responses before danger arrives. This is evolutionary genius. In prehistoric environments, individuals who imagined threats before encountering them survived at higher rates. They noticed predators earlier. They prepared for scarcity. They planned escape routes while others reacted in the moment. That neural wiring didn't disappear, it evolved into what you experience today as overthinking. A 2025 study from the Netherlands demonstrated that future-oriented positive mental imagery significantly reduces anticipatory anxiety and distress during exposure to feared situations. Participants who engaged in mental simulation of future scenarios showed decreased anxiety over time, while control groups showed no improvement. So when you mentally rehearse that difficult meeting or imagine multiple outcomes for a decision, you're not wasting energy. You're doing what your brain was designed to do: stay ahead of chaos. This is why overthinkers become the people others turn to during crises. You've already wargamed every scenario before it unfolds. But future simulation alone doesn't explain why a single awkward comment can echo in your mind for weeks. That leads us to the second trait. You don't just ask, "What did I say?" You ask, "How did it land? Did I hurt them? Will they misinterpret me? Should I clarify?" This isn't insecurity. It's what psychologists now identify as emotional hyperresponsibility, and it's directly linked to a specific type of empathy that most people don't possess. Research published just days ago in January 2026 distinguishes between healthy empathy and what's called hyperempathy disorder, a condition where individuals don't just understand others' emotions, they absorb them as intensely as if they were their own. Here's the critical distinction. A meta-analysis of over 20,000 people published in December 2025 found that most types of empathy, empathic concern, and perspective taking actually protect against burnout. But one specific type, emotional resonance, automatically absorbing others' emotions, significantly increases vulnerability to emotional exhaustion. If you carry the emotional weight of interactions far longer than others, if unresolved conversations create physical tension in your body, if you replay moments trying to understand the ripple effect of every word, you have heightened emotional resonance. This explains why you choose language so carefully, why you measure tone and context, why you don't want to cause harm, even accidentally. This depth of care isn't weakness, it's empathy with precision. But without boundaries, this gift becomes a burden that leads to what researchers call compassion fatigue. The paradox is striking. The same trait that makes you compassionate and deeply connected to others also makes you vulnerable to emotional overload if you don't learn to regulate it. Most people skim reality. You absorb it in high definition. This is sensory processing sensitivity, a neurobiological trait where your brain processes exponentially more information per moment than average. Research published in January 2025 Inches, Behavioral Brain Research provides groundbreaking evidence. Individuals high in SPS show reduced functional connectivity between the salience network, SN, and frontoparietal network, FPN, which serves as a key mediator linking brain connectivity to emotional reactivity. Translation: your brain notices micro details others automatically filter out: a shift in someone's tone, a pause before they reply, the energy change in a room that nobody else seems aware of. A 2014 fMRI study, replicated in 2021, found that highly sensitive individuals show significantly stronger brain activation in regions involved in awareness, integration of sensory information, empathy, and action planning. Specifically, the cingulate cortex, insula, inferior frontal gyrus, and premotor areas. While others experience life in broad strokes, you experience it in layers. You don't just live through moments, you dissect them, reflect on them, and try to understand their meaning. This is why you often feel mentally exhausted even when you've done nothing. Your brain has been processing thousands of microsignals all day that the world never asked you to notice. Research shows this chronic activation of attention and processing systems can lead to elevated cortisol, disrupted metabolism, and impaired hippocampal function over time if not managed. This explains why people often misunderstand you as slow or inactive. From the outside, it looks like hesitation. Inside, your mind has been running non-stop cognitive analysis. You don't shut down easily because your brain doesn't believe the work is finished. There's always another layer to explore. Here's the truth they don't teach in psychology textbooks. Overthinking is creativity without a target. The same neural pathways that allow artists to create, strategists to innovate, and visionaries to solve complex problems are the exact pathways your brain uses to generate scenarios, connections, and possibilities. A December 2025 study, published in BMC Psychology, found that artistic creativity significantly predicted reduced difficulties in emotion regulation, 18% of variance, and lower social anxiety, 15% variance. The research showed a negative correlation, R equals negative 0.42, between creativity and emotion regulation difficulties, meaning higher creativity is associated with better emotional control, not worse. But here's the catch. When creative energy has no meaningful outlet, it turns inward. What could be used for innovation manifests as repetitive worry loops. This explains why so many overthinkers experience dramatic mental relief when given complex, meaningful challenges. When your imagination has a target, it stops targeting you. You weren't built for boredom, routine, or surface-level tasks. You were built for complexity, strategic thinking, and deep problem-solving. November 2025. Neuroscience research confirms that anxious thoughts physically rewire your brain through a process called central sensitization, where repeated activation of fear pathways strengthens those neural connections. Every time you engage in unproductive worry, you're literally training your brain to be more anxious. The solution isn't to quiet your imagination, it's to redirect it toward challenges worthy of its power. When creative minds lack meaningful work, they create problems to solve. Give them real problems, and they thrive. The fifth trait explains why you can't just let it go. Need for cognitive closure. NCC. A psychological drive for coherence, resolution, and meaning. A November 2024 study on medical students found that individuals high in conscientiousness show significantly higher NCC scores, meaning they experience stronger discomfort with ambiguity and unresolved situations. The research revealed that individuals with higher levels of conscientiousness are more careful and avoid risks, preferring structured processes and clear outcomes to reduce stress. Your mind keeps revisiting decisions not because you're indecisive, you're trying to close the gap between reality and your internal standards. You don't want good enough. You want alignment between your actions and your values. This is why unanswered messages linger in your thoughts for days. Unclear relationships drain your energy. Decisions made without sufficient information feel physically unbearable. Conversations that end without resolution create body tension. You're not rigid, you're meaning-oriented. Your brain craves integration, consistency, and coherence. When things don't make sense, when loose ends remain untied, your default mode network continues processing in the background until it finds resolution. A 2025 study distinguishes between perfectionistic strivings, setting high goals, and conscientiousness, careful, structured approach, showing they predict different behavioral patterns, but both relate to cognitive closure needs. Yes, this trait is exhausting, but it's also why overthinkers produce higher quality work, make more ethical decisions, and outperform others in long-term outcomes. You don't rush because you care. You analyze because integrity matters to you. Here's what nobody tells you at 3 a.m. when your mind is racing. You're not overthinking because something is wrong with you. You're overthinking because your mind is powerful, sophisticated, and engaged with reality at a level most people never access. October 2025, neuroscience research confirms. Overthinking is not simply a personality quirk or character flaw. It reflects specific neurobiological processes involving the default mode network, prefrontal cortex, amygdala, and stress hormone systems. The problem was never that you think too much. The problem is that nobody taught you how to work with a brain like yours. When complex systems aren't understood, they feel like chaos. When they are understood, they become assets. You anticipate because you're future-oriented. You carry emotional weight because you have heightened empathic resonance. You feel exhausted because you process sensory information in layers. You imagine endlessly because your creativity has no off switch. You can't let go because your brain demands cognitive closure. None of this points to weakness. It points to a mind that refuses to live on autopilot. In a world that rewards speed, confidence, and simplicity, the world quietly relies on people like you, the ones who slow things down enough to notice what actually matters. The next time your thoughts start spiraling, remember, your mind isn't attacking you. It's asking for meaning, direction, and challenges worthy of its capacity. You don't need to become less sensitive, less thoughtful, or more like everyone else. You need to stop believing that depth is a defect, because in a world drowning in impulsive reactions, shallow certainty, and careless decisions, people who think deeply are rare and necessary. You were never broken. You were built differently. And that difference isn't your weakness. That's your power. Now I want to ask you something. Which of these 5 traits hit closest to home? The future simulation, the emotional hyper-responsibility, the sensory overload, the untargeted creativity, or the need for closure? Drop it in the comments not to explain yourself, but because finding others who think like you reminds you that you're not alone in this. If this video felt like someone finally saw the way your mind actually works, not what they think it should be, hit subscribe. This channel exists for people who feel too deeply, think too much, and were never meant to live on the surface. You don't overthink because you're weak. You overthink because your brain is powerful, and now you finally have the neuroscience to prove it.